has to say about all of this. Chris Wilson, a Republican strategist, Kirsten Powers, a Fox News political analyst, Griff Jenkins, a Fox News correspondent, and today's Fox wild card, sitting in the fourth chair, Fox News anchor, Craig Jarrett. Good to see you all.
Okay.
All right, so let me start with you, Kirsten, because you're on the Dem side, and I don't know if you're going to defend Bill Clinton or not, but it seems like he got things under wraps for a while, and that he wasn't coming out and showing his emotion, and now that finger wagging is the telltale sign that he's back.
Yeah, it did seem that way, but I think it was inevitable this was going to happen again, and I don't think this kind of stuff helps her. I think he does help her when he goes out and campaigns and talks about her and talks about what she's going to do and what needs to happen to the country. When he starts talking all this I stuff about what I did when I was president, you know, to watch that, you would actually think Bill Clinton's running for president, and that does not help Hillary Clinton.
But aside from the I issue, Greg, what about the anger issue, the A issue?
I know. I mean, it's all over the place. It's not only but it's controversial comments that nobody can really believe, and then he loses his cool. Look, this guy is the human torpedo, and he is sinking Hillary's presidential ship. It's listing badly, and I'm not sure she can write it. And you can trace the free fall of her presidential campaign back to before South Carolina, his racially charged remarks. It alienated voters, and it galvanized Democratic Party leaders for Obama. And look at the exit polls where she took a thumping in that state and has never recovered. 60% of the people said Bill Clinton's remarks made a difference. If she's looking for a scapegoat, somebody to blame, look no further than your own husband.
And Chris Wilson, GOP strategist, a lot of people said that possibly he angered females, and that was the sect of the population that she could not lose, specifically white females, to Barack Obama.
Oh, that's exactly right. It's just it's a sideshow at this point. It's become like watching a soap opera, and no one wants the cast from The Young and the Restless running the country, and that's kind of what he's become. It reminds me of an aging rock star who doesn't realize he no longer looks good in spandex. He just kind of keeps getting out there, going after it again and again, and it just won't stop. And everyone's exactly right. It's killing her campaign.
All right, Griff Jenkins, what about the fact that this Holman guy now, who got into a tiff with Clinton, he says that he possibly may have even been hit by the former president?
I think it's good. Let me defend Bill here for a second.
It's good.
I say we are getting so close down here, and jump in here anytime. It's coming down to a photo finish with these delegates, with everything, and she doesn't have the personality that Obama has to generate the media attention, to keep her on the front page. He does. I say put him out there, go to bowling alleys, go to bars, go anywhere. Just keep him out there because the attention is on the Clinton campaign.
No, but what he does he reminds people of what they didn't like about the Clintons, the controversy, the perpetual scandals, whether they be sex scandals or whatever, impeachment and so forth. And everybody kind of goes, I'll go with the guy who doesn't have the baggage.
Kirsten, he doesn't remind people of what they loved about President Clinton?
I think that he does remind people of that when he's not acting angry, and he's not, but we so consistently see him getting in arguments with people or talking about himself, and it sort of distracts from Hillary's central message. And I think the other thing you brought up, he talks about controversial things that she doesn't want to talk about. She's not trying to make the Iraq War a central issue, and he brings up, famously, his position on the Iraq War and things like that. It's off message. When he's on message, he's fantastic, and I think he helps her. It's trying to get both of those things together.
But can't she stay in the media spotlight without him?
She'll be in the media spotlight without him, and I actually don't think she's as dead as everybody says she is.
She's gotten better.
No, but I mean, the campaign isn't as dead as everybody says.
Well, a new poll in Wisconsin says that she's actually leading in that poll.
And she's she very well could win Texas and Ohio and Pennsylvania. We have to wait and see what's going to happen.
Yeah, but she's losing day by day in Texas. I mean, that lead has shrunk now, and the ARC poll has him ahead of Hillary. So
yeah, I just think we still don't know what's going to happen, and she still is winning white women.
I would say, though, in a change election, you don't want him out there reminding people about the past. It's not helpful to her campaign.
Right.
I want to ask you a little bit about Barack Obama, because news today that there was possibly plagiarism in some of the speeches. Deval Patrick, who was running for governor in Massachusetts in 2006, they're seeing a similarity in the words now. Greg, not sure if you'd have time to look at this yet.
Yeah, I did.
But do you think that it was plagiarism? Now Barack Obama coming out and saying, maybe I should have credited Patrick for these words.
It's close, and it's very reminiscent of what killed Joe Biden's first presidential campaign. What was it, 88? He plagiarized a British author or politician, and that was the end of Joe Biden, and he was really kind of a front runner back then, and he went down.
Chris Wilson, I want your opinion on this.
Well, I agree completely, and it's exactly reminiscent of what happened with Joe Biden, and at that point, Joe Biden became a joke they spent 10 years recovering from, and he did recover from it well, but this is something Obama's got to deal with immediately, and I think step out of it, because if it continues to spiral and become a long-term story, he's in real trouble over this.
Apparently they're friends, and apparently they had a discussion, and Patrick said, you can use my words, but we will continue to follow this story, and we're going to stick around with our A-list panel here for some other discussions as well. It's endorsement mania as former President Bush announces his backing of John McCain for president. As more and more Republicans show support for the senator, will the party's conservative base fall into line as well? That is the loaded question we're going to ask next.
History will be made. The most powerful name in politics, Fox News Channel.
You've been around the track, you hear these criticisms, and I think they're grossly unfair. He's got a record that everybody can analyze in the Senate, a sound conservative record, and yet he's not above reaching out to the other side. So I hear these criticisms, and Barbara knows I get a little bit annoyed about them, frankly.
Former President George Bush defending John McCain, who has faced challenges from conservative Republicans who don't see him as conservative enough. The former president trying to put those fears to rest, reminding the crowd even Ronald Reagan was accused of not being conservative enough. Another issue for John McCain, how to use President Bush, the current president, on the campaign trail. According to the New York Times, McCain's campaign will ask for the president's support as a fundraiser, but little else. Let's see what today's A-list has to say about it all. Griff Jenkins, what do you think about the fact that John McCain apparently wants the former president, hey, go out there and raise a lot of money for me, but maybe not show up with me?
Yeah, that seems a little obvious, just because, you know, you've got this whole dynamic in where it's a Bush or a Clinton, and it's the same, we're picking the same pool of the last 30 years from like 5 people. We're a nation of like 300 million. But that said, I did think 41, as he's called, Bush Sr., was an important endorsement, just because he's viewed as a pretty respectable elder statesman in the Republican Party. And with that riff with the right, you got to start somewhere. Maybe that's a good start.
Chris Wilson, I got to get your take on it. GOP strategist, will this rally the conservative base? Because a lot of people saying Bush 41, well, he wasn't ultimately that conservative either.
It's really not important for the conservative base, but it sends a strong message to the Republican money community that it's time to come on board, because at this point, they've really sat it out. They've waited to see who the nominee was going to be. Bush 41 says to those money people who are sitting on the sidelines, come on board. We're all on one ship here. Jump on and let's get it moving.
Kirsten, the Democrats must love the fact that the Republicans can't come together on this. You still have Mike Huckabee in the race. He says he's going to stick it out. So we're not coalescing the conservative base behind John McCain.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear that John McCain is going to be the nominee, and so I agree. I don't think that Bush Sr. helps him that much with the conservative base. It may help him elsewhere, but he doesn't really need help elsewhere. He needs help with the conservative base. He doesn't need people to tell the public that he's respectable or that he's moderate. Everybody already thinks that. And I just don't think there's anybody, frankly, who's going to come forward that any of these people are going to listen to. They're just, is Rush Limbaugh going to change his opinion because some politician gets up and says something? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think Kirsten's right. I mean, look, Bush 41 is no Oprah. Too bad for John McCain. And he's probably not going to alter the opinions expressed every day by the radio mafia, as dubbed by Fred Barnes, the Limbaugh, Ingram, Coulter, and so forth. But I think your point, Chris, is really well taken, that it might get social conservatives who have, a reticence about John McCain to get off their duffs come November and actually get out and cast a ballot. Apathy is the Republicans' worst nightmare among social conservatives in November.
Okay, now, but what about the fact that the sitting president, Kirsten, the sitting president, that John McCain's strategy session over the weekend, apparently the advisor said, well, let's have him fundraise for us, but let's not necessarily have him out on the campaign trail. Today, John McCain took that question from the audience, and he says, no, I'd love to have him with me.
Well, what else can he say? I mean, when you're put in that situation, you have to say that, but I'm sure Al Gore, if he was asked that question about Clinton, probably had some way to finesse that as well, but Clinton
that ended up not working very well for Al Gore,
though. Well, it depends on who you talk to. There are people who argue he didn't win because of Clinton not being there, but if you talk to people in the Gore campaign, they can make a persuasive argument in the other way. It was a similar situation where they felt like they couldn't be out there with him. Bush, of course, is a very unpopular president. It's a different situation. But I think that, John McCain at the same time can't be dissing him because the conservative base still, Bush still has pretty high approval
that is
ratings
the one
among
place
them.
that Bush helps with is that conservative
I was going to say,
base.
can he go out and rally that on behalf of John
George W.
McCain?
Bush has the ability to go out and get the conservative base activated for John McCain, and that's why McCain needs to keep him on board and keep him happy and say, yes, I do want him out campaigning with me. There are places in America where that does matter. The conservative base is one of them. There are geographic places as well, and so it's an important thing.
I wonder if it makes any difference to Mike Huckabee, who's sort of like the guest who won't leave the party, and hey, turn out the lights, I'm going to bed.
In Ron Paul, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Ron Paul kind of suspended his campaign, but the interesting thing about Mike Huckabee, he said, hey, I haven't had any big names endorse me yet, so what's the big deal about this one?
The guy is mathematically challenged, to be sure. I thought it was wonderful he went to the Cayman Islands, so I guess he does have a future making money on the speaking circuit.
Yeah, we'll give him an A for perseverance, right?
It's a vanity contest for him at this point.
I guess so.
Stick around, A-list, because we're going to move on to another story here, but we want your take on it as well. He says the royal family murdered Princess Diana and his son Dodi. Today, Mohammed Al-Fayed takes the stand. Bombshell testimony. We'll tell you what he said next.